How can we fix Wall Street so the horrors of the last year don't happen again? Alice, pay caps, is that the right idea?
Yeah, I don't think pay caps are the right idea. I think, first of all, they work against human nature, and second, they don't address the real problems. We've got to do something else.
And so what's that?
Well, first of all, acknowledging that this is a drastic change and it may not be feasible, but I've got to say what I think would really work. And what I think would really work is that the banks should do management buyouts and become partnerships again. When they were partnerships, they had a check on their ability to put their losses onto the public. They couldn't do things that were radically risky and then simply raise capital if there was a problem and yet take the profits for themselves when there were losses. So as an asymmetric.
And this way, in the partnership model, the partner's capital is on the line. They have to leave the partnership eventually down the road, so they're obviously not going to do anything that actually is betting the farm every year, whereas now, just a bonus, paid for by whoever was dumb enough to buy equity in the firm, or bonds, as the case may be, lend the firm money. So, I mean, do you think that's even remotely feasible?
I think it's very unlikely. You know, you could argue that we ought to create private utilities, and we ought to make these, we ought to go back to Glass-Steagall, and we ought to make the underwriters private utilities where they are enabled to have a license to do what they do if they take underwriting risk, and they keep that risk on their own books with the partners' capital put up, and they're not allowed to, in effect, securitize it off on the public. It's possible, but we don't have a political system that enables that kind of radical change very easily.
And so if that's unfeasible, what do you think will happen or could happen?
Yeah, what I think will happen is that we're going to have business as usual. I saw this in the insurance industry where you have the same problem with catastrophic losses, and it went on for a long time where investors keep putting in money, they hope things will change, a new group of investors loses money, and you know, the problem with banking is it's a social utility where it's critical to capitalism, and unless political will, comes into reform it, I don't think we're going to get real reform. I don't feel very optimistic.
And again, if we could get it, what would it look like? Assuming we can't force them to go private again.
If we could get real reform, obviously we would get the government out of the banking business, and then we would regulate the banks to separate Glass-Steagall again.
You would, so you put in Glass-Steagall again.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, underwriting and commercial banking need to be separated. It worked much better when they were.
And it's remarkable when you think about it that it worked for 50 years, and then finally we had that period where the prosperity was so great we can dismantle the law, and then here we go, almost immediately thereafter.
Yeah.
Everything, all hell breaks loose again.
If you worked at an investment bank during that period, you know all of the problems that resulted from the supposed synergies of cross-selling, because it created immediate conflicts of interest between every client group that was served by the firm. And it created reasons to sell loss leaders for one product in order to get other products, and it caused crazy mispricing of different products. And so, it doesn't make sense. And you've got risks that are very asymmetric that are being sold, and you need to have one person focus on one product.
And it seems like the political will has gone in part because all the assets have recovered in value and so forth. If we have another leg down, then you probably do get, in fact, the possibility that we can do something about it. And if you look back to the 1930s, when most of our securities laws and institutions were created, that's what happened. It was 5 years after the market crash, and it was because we just continued descending into this hell.
That's right. And looking at the 1930s, I hope that won't happen, but the hell. But there were some differences. You had a different political system. Certainly the political fundraising machine was very different, and legislators did not have to be as short-term in their focus. And you had a real statesman then in Congress. I think we have some now, but they really work against a system where the need to get reelected does not help the cause of major reform.
Thanks, Alice.
Thanks, Henry.